76 more COVID-19 patients from Kandakadua. Government schools closed for a week from tomorrow till the 17th of July. COVID-19 to force a change in the electoral system. Do not allow a second wave of COVID-19, a request from the former Prime Minister. Sri Lanka Navy apprehends a group who attempted to enter the country illegally by boat. One person in the group suspected to be a COVID-19 patient. Amitabh Bachchan, Abhishek Bachchan and Aishwarya Rai test positive for COVID-19.
Good evening, you're watching Primetime News on TV1. Now on to a lead story tonight. 2 more employees at the Kandakadu Treatment and Rehabilitation Centre tested positive for COVID-19. Patients were identified as residents of Hinatigala Habaraduwa in Gaul and Akbopura in Kamthale.
The patient from Habaraduwa Gaul tested positive for COVID-19 last evening. He had served for many years as a counsellor at the Kandakadu Treatment and Rehabilitation Facility. Health authorities have taken steps to identify the close contacts of the patient and have carried out PCR tests on 16 individuals who had close contact with the patient. While the results of the PCR test are expected to be confirmed tonight, the Health Ministry said that residents of the vicinity of the patient's residence have been subjected to self-quarantine. Meanwhile, all guests at a birthday party that was attended by the patient have been identified and subjected to self-quarantine. Health officials have drawn attention towards the wife of the patient, who is a teacher. She had visited the Saranankara Vidyalaya in Gona Pinuwala.
PCR tests are to be carried out on all close contacts of the patient from the Kandakadu Rehabilitation Facility who tested positive for the virus yesterday. 16 people including family members and close contacts will be subjected to PCR tests.
Meanwhile, an army officer attached to the Kandakadu Treatment and Rehabilitation Centre also tested positive for COVID-19. The army officer who was on leave had visited the Akbopura area in Kamthale on the 6th and had gone to visit his relatives in Shrinkamali and Anuradhapura. However, the officer had been asked to report to work on the 9th after coronavirus patients were identified from the Kandakadu Treatment and Rehabilitation Facility. A PCR test carried out on the officer had confirmed that he had contracted the virus. His family members in Kamthale and residents in the vicinity have been subjected to self-quarantine. PCR tests are to be carried out on them as well. Meanwhile, a special investigation has been launched to trace the contacts of COVID-19 patients from the Yayapaha area in Rajangan in Anuradhapura. PCR tests had been carried out on 60 people, following which 12 people tested positive by 11:30 this morning. Health officials say that coronavirus patients have been identified from 11 areas in Rajangan in Anuradhapura.
These patients were identified from 11 Gramanilidhara divisions. We have examined 52 samples. 12 of them had tested positive by 11:30 today. We expect to obtain the other reports intermittently and to provide them the treatment as and when required. It will be a problem if schools operate tomorrow. Therefore, we do not recommend schools to be kept open.
Meanwhile, travelling around Rajangani and Anuradhapura and its surrounding areas have been restricted.
101 new cases of COVID-19 were detected today. The Government Information Department said that 76 of the patients were inmates who were transferred from the Kandakadu Rehabilitation Centre to the facility in Senapura. The patients include 14 close contacts within the rehabilitation centre and 4 residents of Rajangania. Now, this brought the total number of COVID-19 patients in the country to 2,612. 620 patients are receiving treatment in hospitals, while 1 COVID-19 patient recovered today, bringing the total number of patients who recovered from the viral infection in the country to 1,981.
Considering the current situation surrounding the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic, the Ministry of Education has established an information center with the aim of ensuring ease in conducting academic activities. Issuing a communique, the ministry said that this step was taken for the well-being of students, teachers, principals and all other officials in the education sector. The communication center established at the premises of the Ministry of Education helps connect with zonal directors of education and officials of the health sector. The information center will operate under a deputy director of education and can be contacted via the hotline 1988. The communique adds that principals, zonal directors of education and education officials can inform the information center about the spread of COVID-19 virus in their respective areas. The information center will gather information on the spread of the COVID-19 virus connected to schools and take steps to control the situation based on advice from health authorities. The communique further adds that if the spread of the virus worsens, the ministry will not hesitate to close down all schools, Pirivan institutions and all other education institutions to ensure the safety of everyone.
The Campaign for Free and Fair Elections, or CAFE, issuing a media release today, stressed that the health guidelines to be observed during the election should be gazetted without any delay. CAFE points out that simply agreeing on health guidelines is not enough and adds that these guidelines must be gazetted. They add that currently the guidelines are not being implemented. CAFE further adds that many candidates have disregarded these health guidelines while engaging in their campaigns and while visiting their constituents. The Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna has called off all of its election meetings scheduled for the next 3 days, taking into consideration the current situation in the country. Issuing a statement, the SLPP said that its national organizer Basil Rajapaksa had instructed to suspend all meetings for the next 3 days starting from tomorrow. The statement added that meetings that were to be attended by SLPP leader Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa and President Gotabaya Rajapaksa have been cancelled. Have discussions been held regarding the measures that need to be taken if a special situation arises?
There is no problem with regard to postal voting. If postal voting cannot be held on the scheduled date, we have 2 more weeks. If quarantine regulations are heavily enforced days before the election and villages are quarantined, then we will have to go to plan B and we will have to decide on whether we will conduct elections in a staggered manner or conduct the election in certain areas on another day. The Commission must discuss about it and see which one can be implemented.
Will the polls be held across several days?
The
NEC had made a request to gazette the health regulations.
We have discussed this with the Health Secretary, the Secretary to the Director General of Health Services and the President at the Presidential Secretariat. When we made this request, the President advised the authorities to do so. Our officials were ready for it and the Director General was also ready to do it. We met the Attorney General. He too accepted that this was required. At least the health directives concerning the election must be gazetted. The President and his Secretary have agreed to do this, but it has got stuck somewhere. We are finding it difficult to figure out where it is stuck. We hope that this would be gazetted at least now. Otherwise, the disease will spread through meetings and the situation will end up like in the United States, England, Spain and India. No one took heed of our advice to limit the participation at meetings to 100. If a person from Kandakadu Centre had attended the meetings that had a crowd of 10,000 people and if he was an asymptomatic patient, we will not be able to identify the contacts of the patient. If the crowd was limited to 100, we can identify the contacts.
UNP candidate Mervyn Silva expressed these views after an event held in Anuradhapura today. Do not attempt to draft final wills when your parents are gasping for breath. Today, the entire country is gasping for breath. In that moment, the government's priority was to hold an election and to obtain a 2/3 majority. If you have an itch to enter parliament, go ahead, but do not kill people. You will be held responsible if even a single person dies. I respectfully request the government to go ahead with holding the election if you want to do so, but do not kill any people in the process. Meanwhile, the government has decided to delay the reopening of airports and suspend the repatriation of Sri Lankans to the island. The health authorities and the government decided to temporarily halt this as there is no space to accommodate them at quarantine centers in the country.
අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා මේක කල් දාන්න.
We hope to postpone the reopening. We hope to hold discussions with the health sector and delay the reopening of airports for the safety of the people in the country.
ටිකක් ප්‍රමාද කරන්න. සියලුම ශ්‍රී ලාංකිකයන්
The President and the Prime Minister are of the opinion that all Sri Lankans must be brought to the island. But when we are repatriating these people, we must consider the safety of 20 million people living in the country and act according to the advice of the health sector.
කටයුතු කරන්න උපදෙස් දීලා තියෙන්නේ.
June 4th, an American diplomat enters the country after refusing the PCR test at the airport. Backlash from members of the government against using diplomatic immunity to enter the country in such a manner.
We express our strong objection to these irresponsible actions. We also challenge the American embassy to reveal the name of this person. Is he a member of the Indo-Pacific Command? Reveal these details. We saw an American diplomat displaying his arrogance by refusing the PCR test when entering the country. The clarification from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs was that foreign diplomats were not informed of the requirement to be subject to a PCR test at the airport at the time the American diplomat entered the country. But what does this letter sent to all foreign embassies on the 27th of March say? The letter had clearly stated that given the current COVID-19 situation, the Ministry of Health will issue certain guidelines and that these guidelines must be adhered to. It has been 1 month and 8 days since this American diplomat entered the country after refusing to be subject to a PCR test. Now the COVID-19 pandemic is on the rise again.
අද දැන් මේ නිලධාරියා ගියාද නැද්ද කියලා දන්නවද? තව තානාපති කාර්යාලය තුළ ඉන්නවද නැද්ද කියලා දන්නවද? මේ අය එනකොට අපි කිව්වා මේ
Today, do we even know if this diplomat had gone out of the country or not? Do we know if he is still inside the embassy? We said that there is a higher risk of this virus spreading if these people come into the country like this. But the government acted as if they didn't see or hear anything and ignored this incident. Foreign diplomats entered the country in this manner. Thondaman's funeral was turned into a coronation ceremony and celebrated over the span of 6 days. We asked this government, who completely disregarded the rule of law, not to endanger the lives of the people in Rajanganaya. According to what we know, they are only conducting 60 PCR tests a day in Anuradhapura as they do not have enough facilities. How can you conduct 60 tests and do this properly? They won't send these for tests because it would obstruct officials who are going on duty for the postal voting process. There are 2 more days for the postal votes in Rajanganaya. But if you don't conduct PCR tests and allow the virus to spread, it will engulf the entire Rajanganaya Divisional Secretariat. The virus is in the community now. The Government Medical Officers Association said that the COVID-19 Presidential Task Force has not met in a month. The government has let this all go. They are under the impression that corona is over. We would like to request the general public of the country not to give up this fight.
Meanwhile, Defence Secretary retired Major General Kamal Gunratna expressed these views following an event which was held in Colombo yesterday. My friends, national security is not only about protecting the nation from terrorists or foreign attacks. It also encompasses ensuring the people's safety from natural disasters and even pandemics such as COVID-19. Officials of the army had many sleepless nights over the past few months. However, our efforts were not in vain because we were more than successful in shielding the people from this virus. We can see there is a resurgence of the virus, but we will ensure it does not happen. We have the necessary machinery to do so.
President Gotabaya Rajapaksa attended another series of election meetings in Kandy for the second day in support of the Sri Lanka Pudujana Peramuna candidates who would be contesting the upcoming parliamentary election.
President Gotabaya Rajapaksa visited the weekly fair at Hasalaka today. During a meeting organized by former State Minister Lohan Ratwatta, the President had instructed farmers to sell their paddy harvest at the controlled price set by the government instead of falling prey to middlemen. The President had pointed out that the government is taking steps to resolve the problem of wild elephants encroaching on villagers. The President's media division said that the President had also drawn attention towards the drinking water problems faced by the people of Minipe. The President had also been informed of the absence of a school that offers classes until the advanced level grade in Hasalaka and the shortage of teachers. Following his tour in Hasalaka, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa attended a meeting at the Wattegama town in the Pahatadumbara electorate in Kandy. A large number of people had attended the meeting. A portrait of the president that had been drawn by a child was presented. During his visit, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa inquired into the well-being of the people. A statement issued by the president's media division said that during the meetings in Kandy, the president had instructed farmers to focus on producing agricultural products to be exported in order to earn large profits. The president had pointed out that as re-exporting pepper has been banned, farmers could export finished products such as pepper seeds and powdered pepper.
3 police officers have been interdicted over the death of a man who had died after police opened fire at him in the Lunava area in Moratuwa. The remains of the victim were brought to his residence last night. A man had died after being shot by the police near a roadblock in the Lunava area in Moratuwa. The victim has been identified as Amit Karunaratna, who was a resident of 7th Lane in Lunava. A post-mortem examination revealed that the victim had died due to gunshot injuries on his head.
He used to earn some money for us by catching fish from the river. The incident had taken place when he was about to go to work. We request the President to serve justice over this. My entire family has been destroyed as a result of his death.
3 police officers who were on duty at the roadblock were interdicted from their services today. Police spokesperson SSP Jalya Sinaratna said that this decision had been made following an inquiry carried out under the leadership of a senior superintendent of police in Mount Lavinia. The 3 officers who were interdicted include 2 constables and a sergeant. National newspapers have reported that Police Inspector Neomal Rangajiva has apologized for obstructing the duties of a photojournalist at the premises of a court recently. The Asia Young Journalists Association of Sri Lanka convened a media briefing in this regard today. This is a serious incident. Incidents of obstructing the professional duties of journalists were reported previously as well. He had apologized yesterday. However, as the Asia Young Journalists Association, we wish to say that extending an apology does not end this matter. It was a journalist bearing an identity card issued by the Government Information Department who had encountered this. If this had happened to a journalist with a state ID card, another journalist at the premises of a court can be murdered. We cannot consider this as an incident that does not have political involvement. I wish to stress that the government must take their responsibilities seriously. The government or Rangajiva cannot escape by simply extending an apology.
මහත්මාගේ පාර්ශවයෙන් හෝ සමාව භජනය කරලා මේ ප්‍රශ්نين ගැලවෙන්න සූදානම් වෙන්න එපා.
Party leaders. Political update.
Meeting at the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna was held in Deniyaya yesterday.
The meeting that was organized by SLPP candidate Nipuna Ranawaka was graced by party leader Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa.
The relationship between Deniyaya and Madamulana has been there since the past. Those relations were renewed after my sister married a person from Deniyaya. We gave him nominations not because he is just my nephew. During the past few years, when this party was being formed, it was Nipuna that sat day and night and helped Basil Rajapaksa. That is why Basil Rajapaksa said Nipuna has sacrificed so much for this party, and because of that, we will give him a chance to contest, as there is a need for youth leadership in the country. Nipuna is the most humble nephew. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa will take steps to bring a private university system to Deniyaya.
දෙනියායට පෞද්ගලික විශ්වවිද්‍යාල පද්ධතියක් ගේන්න කටයුතු කරන්න යනවා කියන එක මම තමුන්වහන්සේලාට මතක් කරන්න.
During a public meeting held in Avisavella this morning, the Prime Minister expressed his views on conducting the Provincial Council election after the parliamentary poll.
අපේ ඊළඟ පියවර තමයි
Our next step is to amend the constitution and definitely conduct the provincial council election, at least according to the old system. There are problems today. We know that you are facing several problems. It was the current opposition that ruled the country for 5 years. The cabinet did not implement what the president said. The president did not do what the prime minister and the cabinet did. They are now contesting the election. However, I believe it is not for a national government.
දැන් ඉල්ලනවා මං හිතන්නේ ඉල්ලන්නේ නෑ සම්දේ ආණ්ඩුවක් පිටවන්න
Meanwhile, leader of the United National Party, Ranil Wickremesinghe, attended a meeting in Kandy today. A group including UNP Kandy district candidate Shantini Kongahage attended the meeting.
I came here with more security measures as the coronavirus is spreading. We haven't been able to control the coronavirus pandemic. It has worsened. I requested on behalf of the people to carry out more tests with the advice of the health sector, but they targeted the election and started distributing 5,000 rupees to gain political mileage. They then wanted to conduct the election quickly. They scolded the election commission and blamed it. We asked for it to be given some time. Many asked to conduct it after the 25th of April. They ignored all that and started the activities targeting the election. Now the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna is saying that they will not conduct meetings. Remember this, during the first wave, our economy had been downtrodden. Is there room for it to fall any further? If you repeatedly attack a weak person, he will die. If a second wave occurs, that would be the end of it. We must stop this immediately. We must carry out at least 5,000 tests daily. When I travel to certain meetings, they ask me to maintain a distance with the people as there is coronavirus in the area. The government must reveal all the details. If they are concealing the truth with regard to the coronavirus, how can they build the country? We must arise from this situation. This cannot worsen anymore. The people of this country and the economy will meet its fate. Therefore, tell the truth first. Learn the truth as well. Do not inquire only from the Director General. Make inquiries even from the WHO, but not from the office in Colombo. They will try to hide it. If we spread lies, we cannot arise from this situation. They lied regarding the economy and destroyed the domestic economy. They are lying about the coronavirus again, and they are trying to get the people killed. These people cannot be allowed to rule the country again.
The UNP leader also paid homage to Most Venerable Tibbatuave Sri Sumangala Thera at the Malwatu Mahaviharaya today. A group including Shantini Kongahage were present during this occasion. The Samagi Jana Balavegaya held a rally in Baligama yesterday. The meeting that had been organized by candidate Rohan Jayavikrama was attended by a group including party leader Sajid Premadasa.
දැන් මැයි බිල එහෙම ගෙදරට ආවද? මැයි මාසේ බිල ගැන සතුටුද? මැයි මාසේ බිල දැක්කහම සනීපද? සනීපද? සැපයි නේ? සැපයි.
Did you receive the bill for May? Are you happy about the bill for May? Are you content with the bill? Are you comfortable with it? Did anyone receive a bill in May that excluded the charges for March and April? Can I see a show of hands of those who received the bill with only the charges for May? Can I see a show of hands for those who received the bill that included the charges for March, April and May together with a fine and a warning that power would be disconnected if the bills are not settled within a certain timeline? Raise your hands honestly. This is the bitter truth in the country. Raise your hands if you have received bills accumulating charges for all 3 months. Record these scenes. These were not planned. This is the truth. I wish to promise you that our government, which is to be formed following our victory at the election on the 5th, will reimburse the payments that you made for March and April. A notice has been sent with a disconnection warning. I wish to suggest that before the government disconnects your electricity supply, I request the people of this country to disconnect the government on the 5th.
ආණ්ඩුව තමුන්නාන්සලාගේ විදුලිය විසන්ධි කරන්න ඉස්සෙල්ලා පස්වෙනිදට මේ රටේ ජනතාවගෙන් ඉල්ලීමක් කරනවා ආණ්ඩුව විසන්ධි කරන්නයි කියලා මන් තමුන්නාන්සලාට මේ අවස්ථාවේ යෝජනා කරනවා.
They haven't done anything great after winning 6.9 million votes on the 16th. The change is now bitter.
While people continue to request politicians to repair their roads, will those requests be fulfilled or will the people have to wait for several years? Residents of a small village in the Uva province were expecting that authorities would construct a road in the area. Now, although their expectations were not fulfilled, these people did not give up on their hopes. The Rajamavata road is the oldest road located in the Uva Parnagama electorate. Villagers say that this historic road had been used since the period of the kings. The Rajamavata road runs through the central and Uva provinces. The road had been last refurbished when the British undertook efforts to improve coffee cultivation in the country. This road can be located 12 kilometers from the Uvaparnagam electorate. It is the shortest route to Badulla and Kandy. This road spans 20 kilometers and runs until Halyala and is used by the residents of approximately 50 villages. Politicians who visit the village on a few occasions since 2007 and promised to construct the road have been limited only to billboards. The residents of this village earn a living by farming. However, they experience difficulties in transporting their pepper and beetle produce to the town. A group of youth in the village had recently taken steps to refurbish the road at their own cost. The machinery used to refurbish the road has been brought to the village out of their own expense.
Badulla Mahanuwara Navarajamawata දැනට අවුරුදු 20ක් තිස්සේ අතරමඟ නැවත.
The refurbishment of the Rajamavata road leading to Badulla and Kandy has been stalled for the last 20 years. We have submitted 7 files. However, we have not received a response from any authority. The government spends out of our tax money. If they didn't receive our taxes, they will not be able to carry out their activities. However, are they doing justice to our tax money? If they have suspended that refurbishment of this road that is between two provinces, we believe that they are not doing justice to our tax money.
ඔවුන් අපගේ බදු මුදල් වලට කිසිම සාධාරණයක් කරන්නේ නැහැ කියන එක තමයි අපගේ විශ්වාසය.
The youth have obtained the support of the villagers and are preparing the road to facilitate a 3-wheel or a lorry to travel through this. They are determined to restore this road and conduct these activities as an eye-opener to officials.
The confidence of these villagers are an example for many. More news coming your way after this short commercial break.
Playing this weekend on Yes 101.
The Weekend Top 30 with Hollywood Hamilton.
What's up? It's Hollywood Hamilton. You know what we do around here. It's the fastest moving countdown in America. Some of the biggest names in the industry in the studio.
Hi, I'm Ariana Grande.
This is Drake.
This is Lady Gaga.
Backstage with us and on the WT30 hotline. I'll catch you this weekend for the Weekend Top 30.
The Weekend Top 30 with Hollywood Hamilton on Yes 101.
Welcome back to the news. 4 people attempted to enter the country illegally on board a dinghy boat were arrested by the Sri Lanka Navy. They were arrested during a special operation conducted by the Navy in the seas of Tondamanaru in Jaffna.
The operation was conducted by a patrol boat attached to the Northern Naval Command. 2 residents of Point Pedro had set sail on the 10th of July to bring back 2 people from India to Sri Lanka. Subsequently, the boat, which had crossed international waters, had entered India where the 2 people had boarded. The group was arrested while they were returning from India. The 2 individuals who attempted to illegally immigrate to Sri Lanka from India were Sri Lankans residing in Velvetiturai and Mullaitivu. Information has also come to light that one person was a former member of the LTTE. Another one of the 2 people has been admitted to the Jaffna Teaching Hospital after he suffered from breathing difficulties and chest pains. He will be subject to a PCR test to determine whether he has contracted COVID-19. The 2 people are aged 21 and 52 years. The 3 other people have been arrested and will also be subject to PCR tests.
Snares intended for wild animals in the hill country have become a crucial problem for leopards in the central province. In many instances, the leopards who were caught in such snares lost their lives. A leopard who was able to save its life was reported from a farmland in Ginigathena.
This leopard was caught in a snare that was set up above a housing scheme in the Kenilworth area in Ginigathena. The area residents had informed the wildlife authorities regarding this. Wildlife authorities of Nallathanya acted swiftly and arrived at the scene immediately. The animal that was caught was a 6-year-old female. The leopard ranged up to 6 feet. Central Province Wildlife Veterinary Akalanka Pinideniya arrived at the location and sedated the animal. Members of the Sri Lanka Army were also present during the incident to support the wildlife officers. A worker of the Kenilworth estate who was suspected to have set up the snare was arrested. The suspect is to be produced before the Hatton Magistrates Court.
Former Minister Partli Champikranawaka called on the Mahanayaka Therus of the Malwathu and Askiri chapters and obtained blessings.
The former minister first called on the Mahanayaka, the Askiri chapter, Most Venerable Warakagoda Jnanaratana Thera, and obtained blessings. Thereafter, the former minister called on the Mahanayaka Thera, the Askiri chapter, Most Venerable Tibbatuave Sri Sumangala Thera. Subsequently, the former minister called on the Anunayaka Thera of the Malwathu chapter, Venerable Dimbul Kumbure Vimala Dhamma Thera.
මහනුවරට දල්ගා මාලිගාවට මහනුවර නගරයට කරපු සේවය තමයි තියෙන්නේ.
විශේෂයෙන්ම මේ මධ්‍යම ප්‍රදේශයේ කල සේවය අධි කරනවා. දල්ගා මාලිගාවට කොට නවරවුම මේ වගේ වැඩ රාශියක් කොටුනවා කලා එකේ මොහොතම මේ මධ්‍ය ප්‍රදේශයේ තමයි නෙවෙයිනේ. නමුත් අපි කනගාටු වෙනවා මධ්‍ය ප්‍රදේශයේ අම්දිවල හිටිය මේ වගේ වටිනා සේවය එතරම්ම සිද්ධ වුණේ නැහැ.
I would like to state I did not assassinate Tajuddin, neither did I assassinate Lasantha Vikramatunga in the middle of the road. I did not provide the LTTE with money through RADA, enabling them to kill more and more of our people. I did not embezzle money through the MIG deal. I did not hand over a process belonging to the Navy to a mafia group, obtain money through it and purchase houses in America. I did not sell off lands in Colombo belonging to the army and buy hotels in Tangol. All the state institutions I overlooked were converted into profit-making ones. I rid them of corruption. Therefore, my conscience is clean. I will face any challenge. Even if I am thrown in jail, I will fight against nepotism, kleptocracy and other forces of evil.
වංශක්කාර මංකොල්ලකාරින්ට එරෙහිව මගේ අරගලේ මේ රටේ ජනතාව වෙනුවෙන් මං ඉදිරියට ගෙනියනවා සිරගෙවල් 7ක ගියා.
Now on a tragic note, 3 members of the same family were killed in a three-wheel accident in Kottala, Veyangoda.
A three-wheeler heading towards Kurunagala toppled into a paddy field. Our correspondent said 5 people were travelling in the three-wheeler at the time. A mother and her 2 children were killed following the accident. The tragic incident was recorded on CCTV. Our correspondent said the children who died were 1.5 years and 9 years of age and were residents of Indigolla, Yakala. Another person who sustained critical injuries following the accident has been transferred to Colombo for further treatment. The remains of the 3 victims lie at the Vatupitivala Base Hospital and police said further investigations are currently underway.
The number of vehicle registrations in June have risen by 22.6% compared to the tally recorded during June last year.
A report published by a leading stockbroker showed that 32,123 vehicle registrations had been recorded in June compared to 26,201 registrations during the same month last year. The figures in June had doubled when compared to 17,313 registrations recorded in May amidst the coronavirus pandemic in the country. According to the report, motorcycles were the highest registered vehicles, with the figures standing at 25,162, while the lowest were electric cars that saw only 3 registrations. The importation of vehicles had been suspended along with several other products in March this year. However, the stockbrokers, citing industry sources, estimated that there is around 1 month of inventory remaining and that the current momentum of registration is expected to continue into July.
An investigation has shown that UK's Export Credit Agency had not reported evidence for more than a year on a payment made by Airbus to the wife of former Sri Lankan Airlines CEO Kapila Chandrasena in return for aircraft orders.
An investigative news service named Source Material had found that UK export finance officials had received emails since 2015 suggesting Airbus might have paid $17 million to the wife of then Sri Lankan Airlines Chief Executive Officer Kapila Chandrasena. According to an article published by The Times in the UK, the investigation had found that UK export finance had not passed on evidence to the Serious Fraud Office until April 2016, once Airbus had conducted its own internal investigation. However, UK export finance officials had said it would be misleading to suggest that it had withheld evidence from the Serious Fraud Office as Airbus had lied. In the Airbus case of 2015, the then Sri Lankan Airlines CEO's wife was found to have set up a straw company in Brunei to receive commission for the purchase of 10 aircraft and the lease of 4 more. According to the article, when UK export finance officials raised a concern that the agent shared a name with the wife of the Sri Lankan Airlines executive, employees of Airbus had lied and said the agent was a male with a similar name. Airbus had paid 3.6 billion euros this year to settle corruption allegations in the UK, France and the United States following an inquiry triggered by the email exchange.
Fish consumption accounts for more than half of the people's intake of animal proteins in several countries, including Sri Lanka. However, little do we know that the fish that we consume contain plastics.
As an island nation surrounded by the ocean, the past few weeks have not been the best for Sri Lanka. We saw failed sand nourishment projects and massive garbage dumps on beaches. Sadly, these are only few of the problems Sri Lanka's oceans face. According to research findings by the National Aquatic Research Agency or NARA, because of the accumulation of garbage in the western sea areas, 80% of the seabed is found to be polluted. Sri Lankan authorities had imposed regulations to ban polythene first in 1994 and subsequently in 2006 and 2017. However, environmentalists claim that these attempts have proven to be futile amidst pressure from plastic manufacturers and retailers. As a result, leading pollutants such as plastic bags, plastic bottles, plastic sachets and discarded fishing gear flow into water bodies and break down into microplastics before being consumed by fish.
So microplastics are extremely small plastic particles, usually smaller than 0.5 millimeter in size, and we are finding increasing evidence that they are within the tissues of marine organisms, including fish, that we consume. The exact long-term impacts of this remain unknown, but you do have to keep in mind that we are potentially ingesting large amounts of microplastic particles in ourselves.
A survey carried out by the National Aquatic Research Agency supported by Norway's Institute of Marine Research showed that the severity of microplastic contamination has contributed to nearly 80% depletion in fish stocks.
Now, we can't completely cut out plastics because they have many positive users for humans, but the key is how do we mitigate it, how do we reduce it. We are using way too much than we need, and if we can reduce that and look at alternatives towards that, then we can at least negate the impacts or reduce the impacts that we have both on the environment and also on human health.
With more than dozens of natural resources in its seas, Sri Lanka has a lot to lose if this level of pollution continues. Whose responsibility is it to preserve the ocean for future generations? Is it the government, the private sector, or does the weight of this problem fall on the shoulders of us, the people? You decide. For the Newsfirst team, I'm Sanitha Senanayaka with Varuna Sampath.
Thank you, Sanitha Senanayaka, for that comprehensive and updated information about the ocean population in Sri Lanka. In news overseas, India's most famous film star Amitabh Bachchan, Abhishek Bachchan, Aishwarya Rai and daughter Aradhya have tested positive for coronavirus.
The 77-year-old legendary actor said in a tweet yesterday that he had tested positive for the highly infectious virus. Within minutes, his actor son Abhishek Bachchan, 44 of age, tweeted that he had also tested positive. Hours after Amitabh Bachchan and his son Abhishek Bachchan tested positive for novel coronavirus, Aishwarya Rai and daughter Aradhya have also tested positive for the virus. Jaya Bachchan has tested negative for the virus but will be tested later again to overrule any negative reporting.
Now we leave tonight with the best YouTube video of the day of the song Naitumu Sri Lanka. Tonight's sign language interpreter was Tarika Gabriel and I'm Maud Razik. And from all of us here at the Newsfirst desk, good night and take care.
Gammata Naitumu Sri Lanka. Best
YouTube video of the day. Gammadda Nagitimu Sri Lanka.